On today's show, the San Diego Padres unfortunately lose the last game of this Mariners series and raise a bunch of questions regarding the starting pitching depth going forward. But on the bright side, at least Luis Arráez finally wasn't batting second.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Thursday, August 28th. As always, I am your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, and I've been covering this team for nearly 6 years now, and not just for this podcast, but various other outlets, including JustBaseball.com, chief among them. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Go check that out. And usually I would say go check me out on the socials at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, or at LO_Padres, or on Blue Sky, whatever. But I'm actually taking a break from social media for a little bit. So everybody reach out to me in the comments of YouTube, and I'll be back when I'm back, right? What can I say? Take a little bit of a break. Everybody needs a break every now and then. But don't worry, I'll still answer your questions on the YouTube. Just message on there. Anywhere comments, I will be checking them more, especially now if I'm not going to be on stuff. But also feel free to follow the account if you want still, just to be there when it gets back. I don't know. What am I even saying right now? But today's episode, guys, we are going to be talking about yesterday's game. Unfortunately, the loss by the Padres. In my opinion, not too many things that I have to say about this one, but I do want to talk about Yu Darvish especially. And then we're going to talk about the overall like rotation fear, I think, after yesterday, maybe deepening for some people, myself included, and then respond to some of the responses I got regarding my diatribe rant on Luis Arráez yesterday. So let's not waste any more time. The Padres lose yesterday's game by a score of 4-3. And look, really, was it like a Yu Darvish bad game? Yeah, a little bit. It hasn't been very good for Darvish so far. I guess the only thing that I can say is, in this start, right, he goes 4 innings, gives up 4 earned runs on 4 hits, 1 walk, 3 Ks. It wasn't a lot of hits allowed, but it is becoming something that we really do need to talk about a little bit more, right? And that's Yu Darvish just not being very good for the Padres ever since he came back, right? 5.36 ERA so far on the season since he came back. And don't get me wrong, he's shown a couple moments, right? Like, that's cool. I appreciate it very much. But overall, what we're kind of seeing is just that Darvish hasn't had it so far. He basically made one major mistake to Eugenio Suarez in this game. Took him super deep. Unfortunately, very similar to what we saw with our boy Dylan Cease the other day. Just making really bad mistakes at the wrong time, right? I feel like that we've seen that a little bit too, and I don't have any stats to back this up, unfortunately. With the Padres, I think rotation is giving up some badly timed home runs every now and then, right? But that's just the way of the game, right? Makes a mistake to Suarez, 4-0, and the Padres almost worked their way back in this one, right? Gavin Sheets, he drives in a run because we love him very much. It kind of like a squibbler through the middle of second base, right? It was kind of funny. This is just not what we're used to seeing from Gavin Sheets using the middle of the field. He usually tends to be more of a pull hitter, hit for more power. Didn't there. Jake Cronenworth then got hit by a pitch, right, to allow, with the bases loaded, score for that to happen. And Tatis almost kind of saves the day. Another double for our boy, Fernando Tatis Jr. 2 for 5 in him in this game with a stolen base. I just like the extra bases, and that's it. That's all I'm really saying, is I just kind of like that he's been having some extra base hits lately, right? Like, we've seen a few of them. He had a double in this one. He also had a double. He had 2 in the San Francisco series. I just kind of like what I've seen lately with him. I'm hoping that we're going to get potentially a final great month. It could happen. It could absolutely happen, but too little too late. Ramon Laureano, unfortunately, has, dare I say, his only bad game with the Padres so far, right? We talked about him yesterday. He's basically been one of the best players in baseball since the trade deadline. He was first in OPS, first, I believe, in home runs as well. He's been excellent. 0 for 4 game with him in this one, unfortunately, right? This is just... It's just what happens every now and then. And what's most interesting, though, about this is that Ramon Laureano hit second. Luis Arráez getting the day off. He actually got brought in at the end of the game to pinch hit for Jose Iglesias, who played second base in this one. In my opinion, my preferred lineup here, I don't think that Jose Iglesias should be the player that replaces Luis Arráez, and I don't like necessarily that Jake Cronenworth went back to first base, and we've talked about on the show that I think some of his defensive numbers, and every time I watch him, the range, we haven't seen as many diving stops as we're used to from him. necessarily, and part of me has been, well, I don't think he was ever supposed to be a first baseman, and it's something he can do, but I don't know if it should be his primary that we slot him in. And then he did that for 2 years, and then he's been struggling a little bit at second, and then you put him back at first base. Look, you got to give a guy a day off. I understand that every now and then, so you just got to suck it up, right? Like, that's just what's going to happen. But in my opinion, I'm saying, once Jackson Merrill returns, is really when it gets interesting of whether or not Luis Arráez is bad. But it was really cool that he wasn't. It was just nice to see real batting and a better plate approach out of the number 2 hole, I think, from the Padres in this one. And I'm really curious to see, with Merrill back, do they decide to bench Sheets? I hope they don't. Right, once again has a decent game, 2 for 4 in this one with an RBI. Like, I just really hope they don't do that, but they could. But my ideal lineup, I'd have in left field, obviously got Laureano, then you have Merrill, then Tatis. Third, the whole infield set, Jay Cronenworth at second base, and then Ryan O'Hearn at first base, especially because he rates really well there defensively, and he's got the height for it. Looks really, really great. The only thing I'd wonder is, should Laureano have been the second hitter? I don't know. I actually really like Laureano where he was hitting. He had been raking so much that if I could have moved someone, I actually think I would prefer Ryan O'Hearn, right? And I'm not saying that this is like a devastating decision, right? I'm totally fine with this, like, right? We'll see how it goes. But for me, I just think that with the Padres, I'm just not sure. Ramon Laureano has been amazing. Don't, like, make no mistake, he's been amazing, but he's been so good that I kind of wanted to keep him, I think, in the spot that he was in. But it's fine. I'm just saying, I might have preferred that. But Ryan O'Hearn also is a guy, I'm saying, that could potentially get that spot, especially because he's able to draw walks and whatnot. 1 for 4 in this game, very cool. Not much else, though, unfortunately. Manny Machado continues to be, unfortunately, just not driving in a lot of runs. It's not something that I'm concerned about, but he has been a little bit of a black hole in the month of August so far, specifically with a 8. Wait, hold on. Let me see. I'm looking at all seasons. My bad. In the 2025 season, so far through the month of August, Manny Machado has a 620 OPS. He just hasn't been very good this month. I'm hoping that he wakes up in September. Shout out Green Day. But that's basically it for that. Now I got to talk about Yu Darvish really quickly. Because Yu Darvish wasn't very good in this game. And we have to see if the Padres are going to be able to get enough movement, enough power, what's the word? Enough value out of the back end of the rotation. I actually was texting my man Big Jim Grease during the game, and he was like, I actually have a little bit of faith in Nestor Cortez being that guy, because at least we've seen it with Nestor Cortez before. JP Sears, Randy Vasquez, he could give you the 4 innings, but it won't be pretty all the time, and he might get lit up every now and then, the peripherals and just the stuff. He walks too many guys. It could be a little bit of a problem, but mostly it's just a problem that Dylan Cease isn't good this year, like, at all, frankly. And it basically leaves a situation in which the Padres, their bullpen's great. We love this bullpen. It's the best in baseball. But it does leave you thinking, hey, man, I mean, are we pushing this a little bit too much? For those who might not remember, back in 2023, I believe it was, the Padres also had, at times, a pretty good bullpen, especially with Josh Hader. But then the lack of really consistent starting pitching and the lack of offense, asking the bullpen to do too much, maybe it weighed on them. I don't know for sure. This is a non-statistical type of argument or point that I'm trying to make, but we'll have to see. Will they be in trouble with Yu Darvish? I don't know, folks. I do not know, but it is definitely more of a question, despite the great bullpen, whether or not they're going to be able to make it through the season. But folks, what I can tell you is that you're going to make it through all the car travels with our friends over at Upside, guys. Are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code SEASON and get an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. That sounds great, right? It's amazing, right? Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited time promo code SEASON for a limited 25 cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code SEASON, but just to let everybody know, offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. And also, a little bit of a fun one for you. Important request, but it's also a fun one. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners. That's right. Pretty cool, right? Yeah, we're asking about you, All right? And make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. And everyone who completes a survey, take real quick, you will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 Amazon gift cards for $100. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. And thanks for helping us out. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing as always. Look, you hate to see it. You hate to see the loss. But if you remember, everybody, the Padres have a real easy schedule. We get Minnesota next. And you know who you get after that? You know who you get after that, guys? This is why, and I actually think I mentioned this on, what was it, Tuesday? For Tuesday's show, that I really just thought that it was important that the Padres at least squeaked one win out of the series because of the upcoming schedule. Remember, I just like reminding everybody it's Minnesota for 3, one of the worst teams out there right now. The Orioles, one of the most disappointing and bad teams out there. Then you get Colorado, then Cincy, who, by the time we get to that point, August 8th, it's not entirely impossible that they just might not be very good anymore, right? They're 68 and 65, so they're not a bad team, but not amazing. And then you've got the Rockies for 4, then the Mets, then White Sox for 3, then Brewers, but then Arizona for 3. So, like, it's a good schedule. So don't freak out that the Padres are unable to beat the Mariners. The Mariners, and frankly, this is how baseball works sometimes, guys have each other's numbers every now and then, right? Like, teams just have each other's numbers. The Phillies, for some reason, struggle against the D-backs, right? The Mets lately have been owning the Phillies. The Phillies kind of own the Padres, right? The Dodgers, frankly, owned by a decent amount of people in the postseason, but it's a bunch of them. The Braves, they do pretty well against the Dodgers, but then the Phillies own them, right? So it just goes back and forth, kind of like it's a rock, paper, scissors almost, like every now and then the teams just got you. And apparently, Vetter Cup, we were unable to get the victory. So shout out my guy, Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam. We were unable to make you one of ours. It's a silly gimmick, but I like it. I like silly gimmicks in a season that's like 4 months long. Lastly, I just want to mention that Yu Darvish, I think that with the rest of this rotation, I don't have a lot of confidence in JP Sears being a guy. Maybe he can fill innings. We talked about the other day that Stephen Kolek and Ryan Bergert have been okay for the Royals, especially the latter in Bergert. But I want to wait a little bit more for Yu Darvish. I'm just hopeful, I think. He's Yu Darvish, and I'm hopeful that I just want to kind of ignore the numbers for a little bit. I'm hopeful that maybe he's just working himself back, right? And maybe the fact that they keep pulling him from some starts early suggests that they're like, we're really just trying to make sure that he's healthy. So I just want to wait a little bit more before I say that Darvish is just completely cooked, I think is basically what I'm trying to say. But man, I'd like to see something in September, let me tell you. Now, the main event, folks. It's time to talk about Luis Arráez again. Like I said, and as everybody saw, he did not hit yesterday. He did pinch it at one point, like I said, for Iglesias. Was unable to get a hit in the 9th inning. I think it was the 9th inning. I could be wrong there. Let me actually just pull that up really quickly. But some of you responded. One or two of you, frankly, responded yesterday, at least just as of right now, me recording this episode, responding to my takes and why they might disagree. And I'm really thrilled that nobody just said, hey, he's the batting champ. Because I'm just getting a little bit tired of that. Yes, it was a ground out from Arraez in the 9th inning, by the way. I'm just getting a little bit tired of that sort of thing, because my thing is, yeah, okay, that's cool, but what about all the other things he needs to be good at in baseball? So let's talk about some of the responses that we got. First of all, we got responses that were just agreeing with me, which I really, really appreciate. At M. Castleberry 1980 says, Arraez doesn't have a ton of value when he's not batting well over 300. I think at the very least, it's time to move him down. Maybe slap Bogarts into the number 2 spot. Arraez's whole approach is frustrating as bleep when you got Tatis taking off to steal these hacking at everything except his statue take for strike 1. I like that too. What do you guys prefer? Zombie pitch or the statue pitch? You know what I mean? Like, what terminology should we use for a guy who just stands there and looks at the pitch and doesn't even look at the ball travel to home plate, right? I'm trying to figure out, like, what should be our actual, like, terminology for that, but appreciate that. What else we got out of here? Ugh. I hate when I like puke in my mouth. Anyway, at KC_M also says, hey, we're all feeling it, Javi. I love Louis. I think he has an interesting skill set if he used it to its actual potential. I agree. Like, there's a lot of interesting talent here. I want to make sure everybody knows, like, I don't think Luis Arráez is the worst player ever. I don't think this is like Eric Hosmer tier either, even. And Eric Hosmer wasn't the worst player ever either. I'm just saying that I don't understand the lack of, I don't understand why he's revered in a way that just none of the numbers or what you see match it, right? But anyway, he's also my favorite personality in the clubhouse. The guy is all heart, but I cannot watch his at-bats right now. I'm losing my freaking mind. When Merrill is back, sit Louis. OH plays first, Ryan O'Hearn, and see what Jackson has after some rest. Go from there, fingers crossed. Like you mentioned, there's some kind of allegiance for a guy who won't even be back next season, by the way, that is also somehow more important than winning. So frustrating. Thank you, Casey, for agreeing with me. But let's talk about people who didn't necessarily agree with me. First of all, at Kevy 2x313 says, this is why guys that would look doofy playing ball shouldn't be allowed to have takes without a baseball handler. Please, before you have a take this bad, post yourself throwing a ball or hitting off a tee. Until then, please respectfully stay out of this because you truly know nothing, and it shows every time you try to do anything besides interpret stats or recaps. One of my favorite things you can tell for like when someone's an idiot is when they blame you for using information. You know what I'm saying? That's what stats are. No, don't get me wrong. You don't want to fully adhere to just looking at data and numbers. That's how we, frankly, end up with a lot of problems, in my opinion, in this world. Forget baseball. But what is true, in my opinion, I think that baseball, out of all the sports, has just been shown routinely, especially with the increase of analytics departments, that the analytics and the numbers tell us a lot more than the other sports do. Right? Basketball, some of those like intangibles. And a good example for this that just popped in my mind is like Jeff Kent and Barry Bonds hated each other and always fought in the dugout, yet they were all-star teammates and their offense was amazing, right? So like it doesn't always matter some other stuff. I'm not saying it doesn't matter completely. I'm just saying it's a little bit harder to tell. But this is of course a bad comment. I just think it's funny because they also didn't mention this person any point that they thought was idiotic. Right? That's what I really enjoyed with this comment right here. Just a lot of fun. I love dumb YouTube comments. They're the best. Shout out to you, my friend. You are an idiot. But I enjoyed your comment nonetheless. And this idea that you have to play a sport to understand it. It's like, you know, if a country invades another country, or let's not even go that dark. If a movie doesn't make money at the box office and you're like, wow, this didn't make a lot of money at the box office. This is a bust for the studio. You don't go around and be like, yeah, well, you never made movies. So what do you know? It's like, I'm just telling you that the movie didn't make money at the box office. Does that make sense? Not my best analogy yet, but whatever. We'll land this plane anyway. And we got a lot of other comments. So let's see here. Let's see. Where is it? Evelyn Ayala / dash, I should say, S4R says, how about when Tatis made the last out during the NLD last year? LOL, you remember that? Now, I don't know if this is Dodger trolling or if it is in reference to, because it was on a comment for my Luis Arráez video. Well, Fernando Tatis Jr. in the playoffs last year had an OPS of 1,500. Luis Arráez had an OPS of 452. He hit 226. Tatis hit, let me see if I can pull this up really quickly again. Tatis hit 423. So next question, thank you very much. We're not going to do the thing where we pretend that Luis Arráez was also good in the postseason, which frankly he deserves more slander for, but I don't do it because sometimes you have a bad playoff stretch. This happens, right? But we're not done, folks. We've got even more in-depth responses to the question that we got to get to, and I will dispel all of them. Well, not dispel, but I'll give my take on some of the responses to my Luis Arráez slander. But before that, let me just talk to you about our other sponsor for today's show, and that is our friends over at Game Time. There's nothing like catching a baseball game live, the energy, the crowd, the chance to see your team in person. But actually getting tickets, it can be a little bit of a toughie there, right? Queues, the login screens, surprise fees, all that sort of stuff. Your ticket all of a sudden costs $60 more. I'm exaggerating, but you get my point, right? It takes all the fun out of it. And that's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price you see is actually going to be the price you pay. It's great. The app made it super simple. You can even see your exact seat view, right? Like you can see a picture of it before buying. The fees are included. You know your total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. I love the zone deals. You just pick a zone section. They pick the seat for you. You get a discount. It's really, really great. Faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've personally bought tickets before. So go check out the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Hold on. LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. I had to make sure. I want to make sure you guys get your discount. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. day. And just like that, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing, talking about some of your responses to my take on Mr. Tatis, Mr. Luis Arráez. At Cam Wordplay says, people compare Luis Arráez to Tony Gwynn because he rarely strikes out and wins batting titles. But there's a reason why Tony had 3,000 plus hits and landed the Hall of Fame, and Arráez will likely fall short on both accounts. Taking strike one and usually strike two makes sense when Tatis is on first base and threatening to steal second. But unlike prototype leadoff hitters like Ricky Henderson, Tatis is picking and choosing his spots. So his fastball cookies that pitchers are tossing to get ahead and the count are wasted opportunities. That is accentuated when you consider that Arraez is slow of foot and his contact leads to a lot of double play grounders. That's why Schilt asking him to bunt Tatis into scoring position, which to me wastes Tatis' speed and potential as a base stealer, and getting Tatis only as far as second still requires another hit to bring him in. And by the way, you should be asking your 9 hitters to bunt, usually. Unless it's like end of the game, right? You know what I mean? But in general, that's kind of your approach, right? But anyway, the logical solution to me is to use the hit and run early in the count, forcing Arraez to be more aggressive, avoiding the double play, and opening up a gap hole for him to hit through, possibly even scoring Tatis on a 12 hopper that rolls slowly into the gap. How many times have we employed that strategy? Maybe once or twice all year. Why? Either because Arraez refuses to swing at one of the first 2 or 3 pitches, or because he lacks the same wisdom and bat control that Tony G had. I like that, right? I like that a lot. That's a good point, Cam. I really haven't seen the hit and run used as much. And maybe they have tried, but Luis Arraez is so bad at not swinging at pitches outside the zone or bad pitches that he it's going to tend to be a pop out or a foul, right? Like if you're swinging outside the plate, that's just going to be the tendency, right? So as a result, it's hard to even do hit and run if you wanted to, I think is one of the problems here. But thank you so much for commenting. Just appreciate it very much. Thank you so much. But now we have Mr. Tony Sue, who wrote 500 words basically on the channel yesterday. It was a lot. And let's get into all of them. Tony Sue, 8860, he says, man, all the comments both here and elsewhere about Arraez taking pitches. Frankly, I couldn't care less about what pitches he stares at without swinging and how often, as long as he's ready to give it 110% when he sees a pitch he thinks he can hit. I don't think that anyone but desperate batters swing at everything they think is in the strike zone or that they can reach. If the batter isn't ready to commit to hitting that pitch, that's how you get poor contact all the time. So let me get this straight. You are saying you don't mind that a batter lets the opponent get the advantage. That's basically what you're saying, if I'm reading that correctly. And I also want to preface this. I don't know, Tony Sue, if your comments are in bad faith anymore. You comment on the channel a lot, so I love responding, and I appreciate you watching the videos. But a lot of the things that you said, which you're going to get into, are so mental gymnastics infused that I don't actually know if you're being serious. If you're not, incredible, masterful gambit, sir. Like, genuinely great bit. But stuff like this, I'm like, so you don't care if he doesn't swing. You don't care that this batter, who has one of the lowest OPSs on the team and one of the lowest OPS and overall offensive numbers for any number 2 hitter in baseball, you don't care that he lets the pitcher get free strikes on him. I don't know how many times I have to explain, guys, and I think most of you agree with me. It's not good for you to let 2 strikes go when you never strike out, because the pitcher knows you are so hell-bent on not striking out, you will probably swing at everything, because you also don't draw walks. That means he can just throw you a pitch outside the zone, which has an increasingly, very much unlikely probability of being a hit. I don't care how good Luis Arraez is, that's just baseball. But next comment. Let's see what else we got from Tony Sue. If you look at other... No, I'm going to save that one because that one was one of my favorites. Okay, here's probably the reason why Arraez is batting second. Of course, I have no inside information, but here's how I see it. If someone is on base ahead of Arraez, his super high ball contact skills should produce a related very high chance of moving the runner in a scoring position. The problem is that Tatis, based on all season history, very rarely got on base to start off the game. Tatis has started off games getting on base better lately and is generally made up by getting on base at a good clip, blah, 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 blah. Arraez came to bat in the first inning. I'm only because I want to make sure we get to the rest of this. With no one on base of batting Tatis and Arraez 1-2 because Arraez's OBP is pretty average. The Padres are scoring more ways now, but until the trade deadline, the Padres' ability to score runs dependent almost exclusively on Tatis. Either he was in a position to not get base runners from the bottom, and whoever is behind that play. Those are probably things you won't see in player stats and can be picked up only by watching the Padres daily or digging into deeper situations. So you're basically saying, right, that Tatis wasn't able to get on base. Here's Tatis on base percentage by month, every single month this season. 409 in March and April. In May, it was 257. Then 370 in June, 438 in July, August 373. So I don't know what you're reading. I actually can tell if someone gets on base a lot by looking at numbers. I don't know what we're doing here. Next comment, though. This is I don't know which is my favorite point you brought up. So let's see. If you look at other number 2 hitters throughout history, I think you'll only find a handful that had exceptional batting average years, and they were probably moved down to the number 3 spot on the Padres that's occupied by Manny. Batting number 2 can be a thankless task that, except for the exceptional few like Tony Gwynn, Derek Jeter, and Todd Helton, when they were asked to do so, if people only look at batting averages and OBP, but it's a critical lineup spot to produce runs regularly. Today, it looks like Ramon Laureano will be batting second, blah, blah, blah. So here's a couple things with that. Batting number 2 is not a thankless task. In baseball, what you usually do is you have your better hitters at the top of the lineup. So I don't know what you're talking about there. It's at the bottom of the lineup where it's a little bit more thankless. You try to set guys up, just maybe get on base, whatever, add some more pitches, right? And I think it's interesting that you brought up Todd Helton, who, by the way, in his career, rocked a 414 on base percentage. Luis Arráez's OPP this year is 317. Okay? And then next, let's bring up this. In terms of Major League Baseball this year, batters that hit second, right? In terms of plate appearances, these are the 5 that have the most. Bobby Witt Jr., Rafael Devers, Luis Arráez, Mookie Betts, and Kyle Tucker. Bobby Witt Jr. nearly won the MVP last year, right? Nearly won the MVP. Rafael Devers is one of the better hitters in baseball. Mookie Betts is bad this year, I admit, but he's a Hall of Famer. Kyle Tucker has been very good, and in fact, I believe has an OPS of 853. Nolan Shanuel of the Los Angeles Angels, he has a 743 OPS. Gleyber Torres, 775 OPS. James Wood, 831 OPS. Kyle Schwarber, 938 OPS. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., 788 OPS. And then also Juan Soto, Ketel Marte, the best second baseman in baseball. What else we got here? Oh yeah, Ketel Marte, by the way, 968 OPS. And when he's batting second, Juan Soto's here. Jackson Churrio's here. Corey Seager, Aaron Judge is here. So I don't know where you're getting this idea that it's a thankless position, number 2. Because I'm not even looking at all time. I'm just looking at these numbers. And I think it's very troubling that Arraez is 3rd most at number 2. And look at all those other players that I mentioned. Arraez has one of the lowest OPSs out of all of those players. Okay. Next point before we close out this show, because I don't know if I'm going to actually have enough time. The problem hasn't necessarily been Arraez's poor batting average, batting second. Actually, a lot of teams would love to have a player batting to around 290 anywhere in the lineup, especially batting second. I agree. The real problem has been, if not Arraez, who then? If you really want to analyze Arraez's performance batting second, you shouldn't be using batting average or OBP. You should be looking for productive appearances, in quotes. That would encompass not just average and OBP, but things like sacrifices, runs scored, RBI, hitting the ball behind the runner more than any other position in the lineup, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to skip the rest that you mentioned here because I think that you kind of got to it here. I like the idea that productive appearances that would encompass not just average and OBP. You mentioned runs scored and RBIs. Do you know how you get RBIs? You get hits. You know what stat shows you sometimes how many hits you get? Average. You know what stat shows you that you are able to score runs? You have to get on base in order to score runs, and his OBP is low. So the mental gymnastics you're doing here, again, Tony, I don't know. Please leave a comment if this is all just a bit. I don't know if you're arguing in good faith. I just don't. You're making up terms now. Productive appearances has never been a stat. That's not what this is. Yeah, sacrifices, right? That's fine. Hitting the ball behind the runner. If you hit the ball behind the runner and it's still an out, that's a problem when you're the number 2 hitter. You should have guys that aren't doing that. That's called a bunt. It's basically the same result as a bunt, right? Last point from Tony Sue, because I'm just getting a kick out of this. The last point that I like that you sent, unlike when Javier Reyes, I draw the line at batting approaches. Unlike other parts of the game, including pitching and defense, going to bat against an MLB veteran pitcher is disadvantaged by having to react to an action that initiated maybe a 1/10 of a second before the batter has to act, or not act. On top of that, an object is coming at the batter, blah, 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 traveling faster than 150% of a car, traveling down a superhighway, or you could say that. Whatever a batter does as part of his batting approach is entirely up to that batter and his psychiatrist. So first thing, thank you for explaining to me that baseball is hard. Second thing, I do care about what a batter does. If a player like Martín Maldonado is striking out 36% of the time, guys, there's no problem with Martín Maldonado. You know why? Because he was swinging at what he thought would work. That means he's not a bad player. Right? So I actually don't care about what he did because he's doing what he wanted to do. Again, Tony, just let me know. And all of you who responded, I appreciated it. A lot of you sent little comments being like, hey, I agree. This is funny, blah, 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 blah. This is why, right? There is no real justification for Luis Arráez batting second. In the lineup, yes. Could he come back to batting second? Sure. What if maybe batting seventh for a while helps him? I'm open to that possibility. But for you to be the third most in Major League Baseball this year, batting second, and by far having one of the lowest OPSs, when you have other players, this isn't before the deadline, it's malpractice. It's simple as that. But folks, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Tomorrow is probably going to be a fun Friday episode with a guest from CBS 8 Sports San Diego, one of their anchors coming on the show. I don't know which one just yet. And if it's not them, just in case, we'll just be doing a good old classic, like biggest questions for the Padres heading into this final stretch, to which I have a bunch. But until that next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My faithful homies, take care.